From game day to signing day, breaking down every snap and all the news on Alabama's top football recruits. It's time for Crimson and Blue Chips with your host, John Garcia Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in, welcome in. We've got a Friday edition of Crimson and Blue Chips coming at you. I'm your host, John Garcia Jr. Fun show planned for you today. Wednesday, we kind of went off the beaten path a little bit following Monday's camp report with Kirk McNair. So today, Friday, high school football season is officially back. So let's take it back down to recruiting. Hey, that's what we do best here at CABC. Hashtag CABC, by the way, to join the conversation. Let's take it back to what we do best. 4 years of seasons tracked for you on this very podcast. We've transitioned through multiple formats. We're now on YouTube and SoundCloud and 24/7 Sports. But no matter where we've been, high school football and college football recruiting, that overlap has been what we do best. So let's get back to that on this program, and we're going to do so with a blue chip recruit and a top 100 prospect in the country who happens to be committed to, guess who? Your Alabama Crimson Tide. He doesn't do a ton of media, so we're very privileged to get him on the program. Kevin Harris joining the podcast for the very first time. I'm going to spend a lot of time with him reflecting on his recruiting journey, being a part of that ridiculous talent on the Grayson High School football roster, and we're going to be able to see him live on Saturday. So tomorrow, the country can see Kevin Harris in action. So we'll kind of preview his build up to that first game against Tucker High School, the rest of his recruiting process, what makes him a special prospect, what makes him an Alabama prospect. We'll talk coaches and several other points as well before shifting gears to Q&A to wrap up today's program and the week of programming right here on Crimson and Blue Chips. So strap in, ladies and gentlemen, a recruiting heavy edition of CABC starts now. Joining Crimson and Blue Chips for the first time is a kid that we've followed for quite some time during the recruiting process, still technically ongoing, but he is an Alabama commitment as of May 1st, 2020. One of the top 5 weak side defensive ends in these great United States of America. It is Kevin Harris, 6'4", 228, out of Grayson High School. Kevin, thanks for spending a few minutes with us. How you doing?
Doing good. How you doing, Mr. Garcia?
Doing well, man. It's I'm just happy it's football season, right? I mean, I love the off season. We get to see you guys in all these settings and camps and 7-on-7s and all that. That's great, but it's really about full gear, your team, and for you, I'm sure you're happy to finally be able to hit somebody not wearing Grayson colors.
Indeed, back to the real grind.
Yeah, so I guess we should start there. So Saturday, you guys kick off your 2018 regular season on national television. So not only are you playing Tucker High School, which always has great talent, but you're playing on national television. So what is that like? You know, that's not something that very common for a high school football player. So what's kind of weird about it? What's cool about it? And does that change anything in terms of the preparation or how you lead up to game one?
Well, for us at Grayson High School, it doesn't change anything about the preparation. We're used to being under, the line, always in the news about something or anything. And we've had ESPN games before at Grayson, so it's nothing new. We always stick to what we do, and, we always try to come out on top. We take things 1 week at a time, one practice at a time. So,
right.
Nothing really weird about it. I would say it's like a normal thing. So we I would probably say we have like an advantage in that aspect of, the game coming on Saturday.
That's true. That's true. You guys are one of the most prominent high schools in the country. And for those listening who don't know, whether you're talking actual football or you get into recruiting and rankings and stuff like that, I mean, this is as loaded a roster really as there is in the country, including the IMG academies of the world, Hoover High School, schools in California, what have you. I mean, Grayson High School's got a who's who list of prospects, whether it's Owen Popo, the linebacker committed to Auburn, Wanye Morris, who's an offensive tackle, committed to Tennessee. Of course, you committed to Alabama. I actually wanted to ask about that, Kevin, because you guys are all, Kenyatta Watson's committed to Texas. You guys are all committed to different schools. I'm
Hmm.
assuming that was not the plan, but how did that kind of materialize? How did you guys all end up, even though you're close and your teammates, kind of all ending up at different schools? That's just not something you see a lot in the landscape.
Well, well, the thing is, we all know. Well, we're all looking. We all trying to achieve our own personal goals, and we have our own accomplishment in life. So it wasn't really a hard decision. We're all on our own separate grinds, and we're brothers on the field, but we also know we got to handle our own business, and it's not really a surprise. But it is funny because me and Owen and we're gonna see each other every year in the Iron Bowl, so that's gonna be cool. So
Yeah,
it's pretty
I
interesting.
gotta ask. I gotta ask about that. Owen Popo committed to Auburn, Kevin Harris committed to Alabama. How much is there trash talk building? I mean, what's kind of the build up there? Because you still got this year to play together. You're on the same defense. You're in the same front seven, one of the best in the country. But after this year, you might not hit each other, but you will be on opposite sidelines for the next 4 years. So what has that been like since you guys each made those commitments?
Well, yeah, it's just funny. I mean, like, see how it goes in a couple of years. He's talking about Auburn's going to win it every year, but I think Bama's going to win every year. So we always bring it up every day. It's a little cool joke.
Yeah, that'll be something interesting. I'm sure that will come up in several broadcasts in the years to come. And you guys both are top guys in the country at your position. I want to talk about that as well, Kevin, because you compared to Owen and even to some degree compared to Wanye Morris, a lot of these guys were kind of I guess we call it on the radar well before you were for whatever reason. They kind of
Hmm.
they had stars first and they got ours first and things like that. You were I wouldn't say a late bloomer because look, you're committed to the defending national champions before your senior season. And so it's not like you're this crazy late bloomer who people are like, who's this kid? But compared to those guys, maybe a little not behind, but just after, I guess. So, what was it like seeing them, I guess, blow up, and then you wait your turn to get that boom yourself? Because look, again, you had more than 2 dozen scholarship offers, obviously, a who's who list in the Southeast, especially. But what was it like seeing those guys, I guess, hit their stride in recruiting before you necessarily did?
Well, I have to say at first it was a little bit frustrating, but like I just had to really like take it back and just rethink my grind and everything. I had to it wasn't nothing like I wasn't like jealous or anything, but I just knew I had to like work to get to where they were and like just compete every day. I mean, mm, that's a good question, but I don't know, it just happened.
Yeah.
I don't. I honestly didn't really think I was gonna make it this far. I didn't think I was gonna be like a top tier athlete or anything like that. I wanted to get a scholarship offer to go to school. Period. I didn't know I was gonna be as good or anything, but I just stuck to my grind and everything, and I humbled myself. I stayed humble, and I just kept working. Um, Thing worked out, and I'm thankful. Uh, I'm just thankful it turned out the way it did.
Yeah, when did you notice kind of the change? When did you notice, okay, I'm starting to catch up with those guys and now I'm getting the attention. When did you feel like, all right, like I'm no longer, you didn't say you were jealous, but frustrated. When did the
Yeah.
frustration start to subside a little bit and you say, okay, like I got this?
Um, I would say probably going to camps and things and just seeing the difference between like how me and my brothers work and like how other Grayson players work compared to other kids at other schools. I realized I was already ahead of the game because I go to Grayson. Because the way we work at Grayson, it's like methodical. Like we're always moving fast, transitioning fast, working hard, and I already put me ahead. And once I started doing training and stuff like that, and then once the season came around and I was having these big games and everything, it just like I realized like ahead of the game. So it was cool to just see how everything worked out. Just staying to the ground and trusting. trusting the process, like how Nick Saban says, just trusting the process and seeing everything works out.
We were going to get to a Nick Saban or an Alabama question here soon. So you turn the corner, you realize that things are maybe better than you thought in terms of your chances of playing at the next level and playing at the highest level. When
Mm-hmm.
did Alabama get involved? What was that first impression of either, hey, here's a scholarship offer, or being in Tuscaloosa? Just kind of your first true recruiting memories with the Crimson Tide.
I would say like my first time I got out there, it was unbelievable just to see it like in person. It was like I never would have thought I'd be like even just get recruited by them, or be invited out there for anything. Um, but it was great, and like what else can I say? I don't really know. It was just it was crazy. Like it's crazy seeing that, just have an opportunity to be a part of a program like that.
Was your first impression of Tuscaloosa? Was it a camp? Was it a game? What was kind of that first stepping foot on campus like?
Oh, it was a spring practice back in April, I believe, and I got out there and I saw them go to the team period and just like individual work and all that, and it kind of shocked me because it kind of like reminded me of my own school and like how it's basically exactly what we try and do at our own school. Try and transition fast everywhere, have 100% speed and everything we do and all that, and no drop off anywhere, at any position, at any, with the twos or anything like that. So it was a great opportunity to go out there and see that and see how it translates over to the next level.
So at this point, Bama's starting to recruit you. You get the offer. When did Bama begin to separate itself from some of the other schools? Because if I remember correctly, I think Miami was there for you, Clemson at
Hmm.
one point. Again, you had 27 offers, so you had options all over the place. But when did Bama start to pull away from some of those other schools?
I started going back out there a couple of more times, and like after I did my official visit to Miami, I went back out to Tuscaloosa, and I just like took a step back and I sat there and I compared all my options, and like Bama, it really just felt like home to me, and it has everything there for me to get to where I want to be. I want to be, the best possible version of myself, and I feel like this place is the place to do it. So it was they really pulled away compared to all the other schools at that point.
Okay, and what about the day you committed? We have it as May 1st on your 24/7 sports profile. I know sometimes those are off because kids are either silent commits or they leave school
Hmm.
2-3 days before you tell us normal media folk. But when was that moment like hey, I know I'm going to Bama now, I have to communicate that to Nick Saban or the assistant coaches. When was that, and how did that go down?
Happened once I got home and I got to phone my dad. I talked to my mom, a couple other people about it, and after that, I just communicated with Tosh. Actually, I was going to commit, and then you just ended on through with it. And that's how that worked out. So I was really confident in my decision.
Sounds like it. So it was kind of simple, right? Just it was really through
Yeah.
Tosh Lupoi, the backers coach, who obviously is I'm assuming projecting you as a Jack linebacker, Sam linebacker, stand up. Where are you more comfortable? Do you like standing up versus hand in the dirt? Where does Kevin Harris fit on that scale?
Well, I used to love like just my inner dirt and everything, but at practice, well, this year at Grayson, I'll be standing up more often. I've gotten way more comfortable with it throughout camp. It's become natural. I feel fast in it. It's natural for me now. So I kind of like both.
Okay. Do you think that's preparing you for your future at Alabama? Are they thinking that stand up outside backer position for you?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. What makes you fit that, in your opinion? I know what we like, and heck, we've got you as a top 50 type player in America. But what do you think makes you that, both in the rankings and most importantly for Alabama?
Well, I have a lot of people tell me that I'm just that type of guy that's just like plays through the whistle and everything, and I'm like just have a high motor and like I just don't give up on plays or anything like that. I'm a very energetic type of player, but I'm zoned in and focused at the same time. It's like the best of both worlds. It's like an assassin, you know what I'm saying? But but I guess that's what's breaking me apart from just being average. Is playing fast, like my hair is on fire, like some people tell me, and yeah.
Before we get to more on your relationship with Tosh Lupoi and the Alabama staff, I gotta let the listeners in on something with you. Before I really started covering you closely, we were down in Orlando for the Future 50, and we're
Hmm.
watching one-on-one. So you guys, all the top linemen, offensive line, defensive line, whatever, getting after it. And I've been filming, and listeners here know I'm obsessed with video. Everywhere I go, I film everything.
Hmm.
So again, it's routine for me. Okay, we're doing one-on-ones. This player's going, left tackle, left guard, center, whatever. But then this lean kid goes, and he goes 100 miles an hour to the quarterback. I think he made a sack there. But then immediately after that, on the way to getting reset to do the next rep, this kid is running just as fast as he did during the rep, in between reps. And I'm like, who is this kid? Like, I'm not prepared with my camera to kind of focus that quickly, because usually there's a pause, there's some kind of emotional response, there's a
Hmm.
regathering, a regrouping, and then the kid kind of methodically makes his way back. But then I'm noticing a kid
Hmm.
who's flying on the way back, and later when I'm logging the video, I'm like, Kevin Harris, that's the kid. Okay, so it's just funny that you said that, because the first time I remember scouting you in person, I couldn't keep up with you, and it was O line, D line, one-on-ones. That's never happened in my life. There's the two times I
Pretty
couldn't keep
cool.
up were last year, game one of the season. Cartersville was playing, and Trevor Lawrence threw a dart that was so fast that my camera I couldn't get there. Like, it was like a fastball that
Hmm.
I couldn't keep up with. The second
Dang.
time was you during one-on-ones after the rep going back to the line of scrimmage. Is that a Kevin Harris thing? Is that a Grayson thing? Because again, I've done this a long time, been to 100 million camps, and you're the
Hmm.
you're the fastest guy after the whistle. I'm confident in that one. A lot of times we have to think, okay, who's the best here, the best there, whatever. But in terms of after the whistle, I have no doubt that you're the fastest guy back to your stationary position, or back to the line, or back to whatever you were doing. Where does that come from?
That's a Grayson thing, actually. I mean, that's just how I was raised up at Grayson. You always like to trace back to the ball, and try and make a play. Like, even though the quarterback throws the ball, you got to make sure that we're back downfield and, possibly making a chance to make a tackle. I had one teammate, True Thompson. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's a top,
Another Power Five
yeah,
commit.
another top recruit, yeah, a nose guard. So I forgot what game it was, but the quarterback throws a ball down the field. This man, True, turns around, and he's sprinting like faster than everybody else and makes a tackle like 30 yards downtown the field. And it's just crazy.
And
But
he's not a small
that's
dude,
the
for
kind
those who
of
don't know.
no, no,
He's
no,
a
no.
legitimate interior guy.
But that's the kind of mentality that we have at Grayson. So I can't just take all the trades they're doing. That's just how we're raised up at Grayson.
Yeah. Well, no disrespect to True, but you're the guy who I couldn't keep up with. So if you go on your profile on 24/7 and you see some crappy video from the Future 50, that was me. That was me trying to keep up with you,
That's
and
crazy.
I did not do a good job of it. Yeah. So for those watching on the video podcast, I'll try to splice in the clips here so you can see Kevin making me look bad at my job. Uh, Speaking of that, what does Bama see in you? What does Tosh Lupoi see in you, and what is he like? Because we hear stories about how he recruits, how well he recruits, things like that. What makes him that, and what made you want to play for him?
Well, Tosh is on fire. Like this guy is just so. He's just he's kind of like me. I would have to say, like just hair on fire all the time. And he's also a defensive coordinator, so that's going to be crazy. But he really likes my work ethic and everything. I went to camp a couple times this summer, and we worked really hard for the few days that I was there. And it's gonna be great when I get there. We're gonna do some crazy things, some like first round draft pick type stuff, because I'm gonna be working hard. And he's gonna be pushing me, and this guy is great coach.
So, speaking of draft picks and just kind of the whole Alabama culture, I got to ask a Nick Saban question, right? I feel like that's obligatory in this conversation. What are the interactions with Nick like? Is he? We get to see these things on television and when one person, where he's kind of aggressive and he's in control and then he's kind of subdued.
Mm-hmm.
What is he really like for you? A guy that he needed you for at some point. Like, hey, I'm trying to recruit you. So there was something I had to offer him. So what was he like during that part of it?
Well, first off, I just have a lot of respect for him. So, just the way he does things and the way that he, I guess promotes like his process of getting things done. It's kind of something I look up to, something I try and challenge myself to do every day. Do all the hard things, even though it sucks and everything. But it's just all part of getting to where you need to be. But I work really hard at what I do, and I hate cutting myself short, when I'm doing stuff. So I guess we can relate there. Yeah, we can relate on that right there. But I guess that's what I have to offer. Like, just work ethic and everything. Just come right in, work hard, do what I need to do, and get out.
Do you have any stories about Nick trying to tell a joke or non-football stuff with him?
That time they went out on that lake or whatever, they were talking about the boat and how it ran out of gas or something like that. That was probably one of the only jokes he probably told me. But other than that, he's straightforward and serious. Like, it's really cool too.
But some people like that. Some people that's kind of their lane. Is that's something you appreciate, I guess?
Yeah, I do. You always need somebody like that in your life that's just like focus on the right stuff. I mean, there's a time and place for joking around, but everybody needs that person in their life, like Nick Saban.
I'm sure Bama fans listening to this are probably cheering to themselves at that point. Kevin Harris, of course, the blue chip edge rusher, joining us on the Crimson and Blue Chips podcast. Kevin, among the Bama commits, we have a little bit of scoop. We talk to a lot of Bama commits on the show and even otherwise. And King Makuta, your fellow Peach State native, your fellow Georgia boy, if you will, kind of threw you under the bus. He says, hey, I'm the funniest guy in the commit group chat, and then it's Harris. So he said that the Georgia guys were representing, but he said he was ahead of you. Can you confirm that, or do you deny that?
I think I'm far more goofier than King, though. But the dude's pretty funny. I have to give it that. But we'll see. Once we all together and everything, they're gonna see who's the actual like funny dude on the squad. Like, I'll be saying some weird stuff sometimes. This is how I am.
What is that group chat like? Obviously, it's 20-something deep at this point, I guess. What is it like? What is there a leader? Like, what goes on within that group chat? What's kind of the flow of who starts messages? Is it just funny stuff? Is it just a way for everyone to keep in contact? Like, what's the role of the group chat? What goes down in there? That is of course, public. If there's something private, you can keep that to yourself. But publicly, what goes on in the group chat?
Well, it's a little bit of everything, but I have to say Pierce Quick is like the organizer of everything. He's the recruiter, the person that brings everybody to the group chat, does the iMessage, all that kind of stuff. And then after that, it's just like everybody in there is like halfway pretty much a comedian. So it's pretty cool. And then, we just always like to organize stuff, like visits and everything, seeing who's in town and all that, whatever.
How hard do you guys talk about recruiting other guys? Because we know Bama and Georgia are going back and forth right now for the number one class, just like they went back and forth in the national championship game. How does that work in terms of, hey, this is a guy we need to talk to? How does recruiting other guys work, both for the whole group and then for you? Are you a guy who knocks on someone's door and says, why don't you roll with the Tide?
I'm not really a recruiter, but I don't think the squad is really like worried about like recruiting as much as some other teams are, or whatever. Because like if somebody wants to come to Bama, we know the straight business, and they're about their stuff and everything. But I don't really know. I'm pretty sure Pierce handles all the recruiting stuff. So if you want some information about that,
yeah, nobody's surprised that is take charge with those things. I want to ask about the quarterbacks. Talia Tagovailoa, Paul Tyson. We deal with them a lot as well. What are they like? What are their roles in there? Because usually it's one quarterback, right? One quarterback per recruiting class, but one, Pierce was committed so early, and two, they got both of these guys in a short time frame. So what's kind of the contrast between them, in your opinion, and in the opinion of their future teammates?
It's always pretty cool. Went to the opening with them. He was pretty cool, dude. So I met him there and everything. And Paul, I think I met him in spring. So that was a while back. And he talked to me that then Talia. So I don't really know.
Okay, interesting.
Quarterbacks are a little bit disconnected. They aren't there joking around a lot. Pretty serious.
They're more businesslike. I guess that's reflective to some degree. And then for you, Kevin, just your plan, I think is really a part of the new age of college football. Early official visits, early commitment, and to my understanding, early graduation, early enrollment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What went into that for you? Because I know it's a big trend in general, but that doesn't mean everybody can do it. So when did you say, okay, I need to do this, and this academically ahead? And when did recruiting sort of follow suit and make you take those early trips and eventually make an early decision?
So where did it all start? So I just wanted to get an advantage, like personally, just so I can like get ahead of the game and all that. So took my classes over summer and everything. Took my visits. I knew that I wanted to commit before the senior season started. So got all that handled out. That was just a grind. So I could just like focus on what I need to focus on getting size, all that stuff, and getting faster, just playing better, and ultimately just being a better teammate for my team right now. And winning my senior year, and then heading out to college.
So it's a very kind of chronological plan for you.
Yeah.
One more on recruiting, if you don't mind, Kevin. And you've been thank you again for joining us. Probably here a little longer than we both planned for. But what's your plan with recruiting going forward? We know in this day and age, schools see, okay, yeah, he's committed to Alabama, but schools X, Y, and Z typically don't care, and they probably will try to knock on the door at least a little bit. How do you respond to that? How much of a chance does I guess anybody have of changing your mind or opening your mind more to their school?
Well, I'm 100% committed, but I have to say, there is one school that keeps hitting me up daily. They're persistent. So, yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but it is what it is. They keep hitting my phone. Phones on do not disturb all the time, so it is what it is.
Is that something you'd rather keep to yourself in terms of which school it is?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So
I don't think it really matters.
Okay, so you said it doesn't really matter. I got you. So what makes you so confident in that decision and so solid due to Alabama's 2019 class?
I don't know. I'm just happy with where I'm at right now and where I'm going to be at. So that is what it is.
Very good. There's see, business-like from Kevin Harris. See, you're not so different than those quarterbacks. You're not so different from Nick Saban himself. We'll leave you with this.
I'm on and off switch.
Yeah, I see. So we'll let you get back to prepping for Tucker High School again. Saturday, Grayson High School, Tucker High School, 6 p.m. Right, Kevin?
I believe so. 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Is it a ESPN game? Do you know which channel? Because they have other channels. Is it ESPN2 or ESPNU?
ESPNU, I believe.
Okay, yeah. Check your local listings to see Kevin Harris in action this weekend. Football officially back in the South where it should be. But lastly, Kevin, anything you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to anybody listening about you, about your recruitment, about anything? Any message you'd like to send out to any folks who may be hearing Kevin Harris's voice for the first time?
Well, I got 2 words. Roll Tide. That's about it.
Want to thank Kevin Harris for joining us. As we said, guys, he is a surprisingly good guest, and not because we didn't expect him to be detailed or anything like that, but we just hadn't dealt with him a lot in the media. And he, even before the show, told us, he didn't do a lot of interviews. So there was a little bit of apprehension, but I thought Kevin knocked it out of the park. Super detailed, true. He sounded just comfortable. And we got a lot of good information exchanged because of it. So certainly appreciate his time. Again, Saturday, if you're an Alabama fan, Saturday is the 1 week mark before the college football season begins. But the future of your Alabama Crimson Tide is on television all day Saturday. You've got Hoover, Pinson Valley, you've got Cedar Grove, Hewitt-Trussville, and then you've got Tucker and Grayson. Just think of the Alabama commitments playing in those 3 games, which I believe are back-to-back-to-back on ESPNU. Check your local listings to be sure. But you've got 4 Alabama commitments on Hewitt-Trussville's roster: Pierce Quick, Paul Tyson, Malachi Moore, and DeZalen Worsham. You've got 1 on the other side of the ball in that game in defensive lineman Rashad Cheney. So 5 Bama commitments in that Hewitt-Trussville-Cedar Grove game alone. In the Hoover-Pinson Valley game, you've got your future place kicker in Will Reichard, and you've got a top target in George Pickens on Hoover's roster as well, and potentially a target down the road in Hoover quarterback Robbie Ashford. So that's 1 other commitment and a couple of other targets. So 6 verbal commitments in those first 2 games. And then you get to the Grayson-Tucker game, and Alabama's got, of course, Kevin Harris, our guest today on Crimson and Blue Chips. So 7 Alabama commitments playing, many more targets on the field Saturday as well. So it might not be college football, but the future of Alabama football will literally be on display for the country to see. I know I'll have my rear end parked in this seat. You can't see the television here on the simulcast, but we'll be rolling all Saturday long. So again, just want to thank Kevin Harris for joining us. I thought he was excellent, and as we said, we're going to have to bring him back on the pod at some point to maybe recap his senior season, preview maybe the Bama postseason run, get more into his personal story and things like that. So thanks to Kevin Harris. Let's shift over, though. Let's get to what we do each and every show, and we'll end the show like this, and we'll end the week as we do each and every time we strap it up on CABC, and that is with Q&A via Twitter, via Facebook, via email, via YouTube. We've got a bevy of questions, Instagram as well. So where should we begin? Let's go to the email. Let's go where it is sort of new, and we've got a contributor who has become extremely consistent. His name is Dylan Britt, and he's got another one for us. He emails the show, and you could do so as well at cabcpod@gmail.com. Dylan says, "Hey, John, my question today is about the wide receiving core. I've heard a lot about Henry Ruggs being the outside receiver and Jerry Jeudy being the slot. I totally imagine that right the opposite. I think Henry Ruggs' game is perfect for the slot. If you watch the tape, he finds the hole in the defense perfect. Jeudy is the perfect outside shoulder throw receiver, but I'm not the one getting paid to coach receivers at UA. What are your thoughts on this? Thanks. This is a good question, Dylan. I think the perception on slot receiver versus outside receiver is one that has become a little bit skewed because of conventional wisdom. I'm sure you've watched football a long time, Dylan. We've watched football a long time. Conventional thought tells you what? The bigger wide receiver, maybe the less polished wide receiver, is on the outside, while the smaller, shiftier, most of the times faster, better route running receiver is the slot. I think you got to combine those theories for this Alabama team. One, because those three freshman receivers from last year, who are now all sophomores, the core three, Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, they're all fairly close to each other in just about everything. Each of them is from about 6 foot tall to 6'2". Each of them weighs from about 170 to 185, 190. Each of them is probably borderline 4'4", 4'5" in the 40-yard dash. Each of them can catch the football away from their body. Each of them can get behind the defense. So there's not a whole lot of separation between Smitty, Ruggs, and Jerry Jeudy, and in any order. And that's why you saw such diversity in their rankings. I believe at Scout, that was our final class, and we had Devontae Smith as the highest ranked. He was the 5-star. We were just infatuated with his explosiveness and speed down the field. And then after that, it was Henry Ruggs, followed by Jerry Jeudy. On 24/7 Sports, I believe they had Henry Ruggs the highest ranked, followed by Devontae Smith, and then Jerry Jeudy. And then Rivals.com had Jerry Jeudy number 1, followed by Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs. So there was really no way, shape, or form to truly distinguish a pecking order there for the most part. And I think a lot of that is because they're so similar in height, in weight, in speed, in skill set. Neither of the three overly physical. All three need to put on weight. This is, again, going back to their high school evaluations. And, of course, you want all three receivers to polish up. You want every receiver to polish up at the next level. But with your question, Dylan, as opposed to slot receiver and outside wide receiver, I think the difference there is the route running. Your guys in the slot, you want to be your precision route runners. And this goes for the NFL as well. Those are the guys who are going to be matched up more so with a guy who might not be as fleet of foot, who might not be as physical as a traditional outside cornerback. So I think it's more about who you're going against as opposed to your individual skill set. So you want your quicker route runners to be on the inside. It's not so much about height, weight, physicality anymore. I think it's more about the defenses you're going to face. So you want your better route runners to go against their third and fourth corner on the inside, because that creates a better matchup opportunity for you. Antonio Brown is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. I know, Julio Jones people. I know. I said arguably, right? But he's my example because he's the opposite of Julio Jones in terms of height and weight and really speed as well. Julio Jones is bigger, stronger, faster. I don't think there's a debate there than Antonio Brown. But Antonio Brown's route running, his ability to set up the defender, and I would say his ball skills exceed that of Julio Jones. So when you look at an outside receiver, both of those guys are going to patrol wherever they want. But Antonio Brown can make a living inside or out, and he plays outside more than most people realize because they look at him at 5'9" or whatever and say, oh, he's an inside receiver. Well, he plays all over the field, and he's had just as much success outside versus inside. And conversely, Julio Jones has been shifted inside at times as well. And I think Atlanta will be able to do more of that with Calvin Ridley there to complement Julio Jones because One guy we know is going to play outside more than not in that offense is Mohamed Sanu, because he is a bigger, less fleet of foot, less polished route runner than a Julio Jones or a Calvin Ridley. So he's going to be a little bit more destined to play outside. So I think it's more about skill set than necessarily about frame, compared to what it was. Because back in the day, Antonio Brown is a slot receiver all day long. Right? I mean, you don't have to go too far back to see when those types of guys were interior receivers all day long. Did Wes Welker work outside very much? I don't think so. So you think of guys like that, and that's where you kind of put initially Antonio Brown in the box. Well, that's not the case anymore. So when you translate it to Alabama and you go Jerry Jeudy versus Henry Ruggs, I think Jerry Jeudy is the more polished route runner, the guy who can create more separation based off of technique right now, a little bit more than Henry Ruggs. Remember, Ruggs played less years of high school football. I think he's more explosive than Jerry Jeudy as well. So you want that on the outside. You want him to challenge defensive backs vertically from the outside in, because think about it from the defensive perspective. If you're a free safety and you have Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs on the same side, the more explosive guy on the outside widens your base that much more. That means you have to cover more ground. That means you're more susceptible to bolting your responsibility to get outside to match up with Henry Ruggs sooner than otherwise if Jerry Jeudy was on the outside. So now, in essence, it creates more space, more opportunity for a guy like Jerry Jeudy to work inside. And again, I think he's a little bit more polished, catches the ball away from his body a little bit better right now than Henry Ruggs. So I think his skill set matches up inside more so, even though he is taller, probably weighs a couple more pounds than Henry Ruggs. So I think it's less about the stature and more about the skill set going forward. I think that is the trend with offenses, both at the collegiate level and certainly at the NFL level. And let's be honest, Alabama's got a luxury. They've got multiple guys who can do all of those things. I think Jalen Waddell's a guy who can play inside or out. We know that Devontae Smith is a guy who can play inside or out. And conversely, Henry Ruggs, I think, can play inside some as well. But I think in that starting unit, ideally against a conventional defense, Jeudy is more efficient on the inside, and Ruggs and Devontae Smith, for that matter, a little bit more efficient on the outside, at least for now as they continue to progress. Remember, just going into their second years of ball at Alabama. But a good question to kick us off by Dylan Britt. Let's go to Twitter for some more questions. Again, at CABC Pod, if you'd like to join the conversation there. We got a couple of comments coming out of the last show we did on Wednesday. Producer Kev and I spent a lot of time talking about rolling with the tide. We spent a lot of time talking about Deontay Wilder. We spent a lot of time talking about the Texas A&M situation, maybe the Urban Meyer situation as well. And obviously we've gotten the returns on that situation. Meyer suspended 3 games by Ohio State. So we got a little bit of conversation going there earlier this week. Gumby Dave, the only point we'll make on this, Gumby Dave replied to our tweet about not being so surprised that Meyer was not fired. And Gumby Dave tweets, Meyer, quote, didn't lie at Big Ten Media Days in 2018 because he, quote, completely forgot about the 2015 incidents per the investigation committee. Gumby Dave is asking this a little sarcastically and with a question mark. He says, what a joke. That's not an investigation. Clearly, Ohio State thinks we're all idiots. I'm not going to expand on that. I'm going to leave it right there because Gumby Dave, I think, is on the right track from where most of us look at that situation. All right, let's get to actual questions via Twitter. Raphael Monroy, steady as ever, jumping in with a question. Hope all is well. 7 sophomores could be used in the starting lineup on September 1st. That looks good for the future. Besides Tua, who is the most important sophomore? Any noise about who commits next? So, double-barreled question there. 1 team, 1 recruiting. For the team question, if you look at that Alabama class of 2017, number 1 in the United States of America on, I think, everywhere at this point, but certainly on 24/7 Sports and the 22/7 Sports composite. And you talk about names. Alex Leatherwood, starter. Dylan Moses, starter. Jerry Jeudy, starter. LeBron Ray will contribute. Jedrick Wills, starter. Xavier McKinney, starter. Devontae Smith, starter. Henry Ruggs, starter. Shall we keep going? Isaiah Buggs, starter. He's not a sophomore, but he was in that class of 2017. Christopher Allen would have been a heavy contributor. Daniel Wright will be a heavy contributor. We expect Major Tennison and Kedrick James to be in that tight end rotation. Joseph Bulovas may be your starting kicker. Thomas Fletcher has been the starting long snapper. That class of 2017 already unbelievable returns just 2 years in. Unbelievable stuff from that group. But for me, if you're talking about the guy who's going to be the most important, and honestly here, even if you include Tua Raphael Monroy, would Dylan Moses not be the most important sophomore on the roster? Everybody has heard and complained and griped about the lack of experience and depth at the inside linebacker position. Dylan Moses is your stopgap. He is your out. He is your guy to bridge that gap between this era of linebackers and whatever the next era of linebackers at Alabama is going to look like. So I think he is the guy. He is a starter. He got good experience last year as a freshman. And next to Mack Wilson, it's those two guys at inside backer. After that, we really don't know at this point. So I think Dylan Moses is a guy who's going to play all three downs. Dylan Moses is a guy who on third down, I think, can become another pass rusher. We talked about it on Wednesday's show, Nick Saban's ability to adapt to what kids and players are gifted at, allowing them to maximize their impact. If you're talking about Dylan Moses, he's a great pass rusher. He can be that guy. We saw Rashaan Evans do it. We saw Reggie Ragland do it. We saw Reuben Foster do it. He could be that linebacker who walks down on the edge and becomes another pass rusher. Again, there have been some casualties at outside linebacker as well. Terrell Lewis might have been your best all-around edge rusher in terms of proven experience on the roster. He is out for the bulk, if not all, of the 2018 season. Christopher Allen, a guy who has a lot of pass rushing experience. Fellow Baton Rouge native of Dylan Moses, by the way. He was another expected to aid on the outside. He is no longer available for, again, most of, if not all, the 2018 season. So you've got Christian Miller, you've got Anthony Jennings on the edge, but if one of those guys needs a blow, if the rotation is catching up to them, what have you, Dylan Moses is a guy who could be a short-term solution to walk down on third down, particularly in dime situations, because now you have one linebacker in the middle, which would theoretically be Mack Wilson, and you could walk another one down and aid with the pass rush. So I think Dylan Moses could have enhanced value this year, even compared to last year, because last year Rashaan Evans was that guy. He was the guy you saw blitzing up the middle, off of either edge, hand in the dirt, stand up, whatever. He was the additional rusher. I think Dylan Moses could potentially occupy that role as well. And I think skill set wise, conventionally speaking, he's the best pure linebacker on the roster as well. So I think there is your most important sophomore football player on the roster. And you could make the argument, even if you include Tua Tagovailoa. I know that won't be popular, but I think you could make that argument. I think Tua is more important. I think he'll be the starter. I think he'll take the majority of the snaps at quarterback this year, and that's the most important position in sports. So we give that the benefit of the doubt. But you could make that argument, especially with Alabama's schedule. The first 2 months of the year, Dylan Moses could be more vital to the early and sustained success of Alabama. But an excellent question posed by Raphael Monroy. Let's go to Instagram for another question. This one's coming in via Dayton Chapman, a good friend of the program who hits us on Instagram all the time. And if you'd like to do so, at CABC Pod on Instagram. Producer Kev does a great job running that account with videos, relevance all to Alabama football. Dayton says, do you think Alabama lands any JUCO guys like Chester Graves or Keane Greene? Now, these names aren't incredibly familiar for CABC listeners. Chester Graves, 6'4", 240, JUCO defensive end out of Iowa Western. Bama's offered. Miami's in there. Ole Miss is in there. Several other schools are in there. But we don't think Bama has to go the JUCO route on the edge on defense, at least not right now. There are a lot of primary targets out there. We haven't heard the buzz. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Doesn't mean Alabama's not recruiting Chester Graves. But at this point, it seems a little early for Bama to go to the JUCO well on the edge. There are a bevy of additional edge prospects still out there for Alabama to consider, and they're still recruiting a bevy of edge prospects. It's a great edge class. We just had Kevin Harris on the show. King Makuta is committed as an edge rusher. They're still in it for Kayvon Thibodeau, who's not going to decide anytime soon. So there's still a lot of edge rushing success and potential out there for Alabama, I think, before the junior college route will be considered. But Chester Graves could be a name to keep an eye on later rather than sooner. And then Keane Greene, another front seven guy. He's an interior guy, though. That's where it could be a little bit more interesting. He is committed to South Carolina at this point, but Alabama is on record with a verbal offer, according to 24/7 Sports. And DT is one of those positions where I think Bama can add more than one player going forward. And I think that's the difference between interior and exterior guys right now on the defensive line. I think at defensive tackle, you could see turnover on the commitment list, and there's multiple targets Bama has out there, whether it's Ishmael Sopsher, Fa'atui Tuitele, DeMarvin Leal, the Texas A&M commitment. There's several prospects still on the board where, Bama's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the pecking order 4. So there could be some fluctuation there. We know Bama is still actively recruiting that defensive tackle position. So where does Keane Greene fit on that spectrum? Where does he sit on the pecking order? I don't know that answer to this point, Dayton. I would tell you if I did, but I don't. That's a guy who I think you see how he progresses this year at Highland Community College. Again, 6'4", 300 pounds, the vitals there for Keane Greene. So I think you wait it out. And obviously, you don't know how solid that South Carolina commitment is at this point. So that's another factor that is a bit unknown as far as we're concerned right now, at least on 24/7 Sports. But as one source in Mississippi always tells me, you think following high school prospects is hard? When you get to the junior college level, anything goes. Anything can change. Flips, drops, changes of heart. All of that stuff is as fluid as ever at the junior college level. So I wouldn't rule any of these guys out for Alabama, but at this point it seems a little early to start talking about these guys as priority targets or even guys likely in the class. But an interesting junior college guy, now that you bring up the JUCOs, Mr. Chapman, is Rodney Sopsher. That last name does sound familiar, doesn't it? He is the older brother of Ishmael Sopsher, 6'2", 255. Edge guy, can play inside, may grow into an interior prospect. He's at Ellsworth Community College, and Ishmael Sopsher has talked about playing with big bro Rodney Sopsher at some points, and we know Alabama is at least interested in Rodney. So something to track on Bama Online. Stay with Hank South and company there, but I think that could be an interesting conversation down the road. What if there is movement on the commitment list on the interior? What if you cannot flip DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M? We all know Ishmael Sopsher is going to be a hard guy to land in this class for anybody not named LSU. So could his brother be the key? How hard will LSU press for Rodney Sopsher? How does their 2018 season materialize, and how does that affect the Sopsher brothers? Don't know those answers just yet, but something to track for sure. So I think these JUCO names, Chester Graves, Jakeem Grant, Rodney Sopsher, these front seven JUCO names, may be something to revisit down the road. But I like where your head's at, Dayton. I think at some point the junior college ranks will affect this class of 2018 for Alabama without a doubt. We actually are going to go back to Twitter for Q&A. We've kind of skipped over the second part of Raphael Monroy's question. Remember, he asked about the sophomores and who may be the most important sophomore not named Tua, and we went Dylan Moses there. But his second question said, any noise about who commits next? That's a good question. I think this time of year, is always fluid because kids want to get their decisions out of the way. We're seeing it in the state of Alabama. Mohamoud Diabate just came off the board to Florida on Wednesday. Jaden Hill, the top available DB in the state, is coming off the board in the next 2 weeks. Alabama hasn't offered there, so it looks like more of a Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina battle. I think Tennessee's got the edge for Jaden, who's a Huntsville native. These guys want to make those commitments sooner rather than later. Jalen McCullough was a guy we were tracking very closely for Alabama, but he has since committed to Tennessee. The other safety we were tracking even more so, Daxton Hill, he's been pretty quiet. Number one safety in America, been pretty quiet. But as far as we know, that early September official visit to Michigan is still on board. So at this point, it looks like he'll take that visit and then he will look to make a decision. So I think that's something to track after he makes that visit to Ann Arbor. Alabama in the top 2, it seems, for Daxton Hill. So he's one I would keep a bit of a close eye on from the Alabama perspective. A lot of the other top targets really taking their time. We mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau. He's waiting. Nakobe Dean, the top inside linebacker target, he's waiting. Henry To'ofo is waiting. Noah Pola-Gates, another safety, is waiting. As far as we know, those guys are going to take trips and ease into their season, and the recruiting process will be reciprocated as such. So I don't think Bama sees a boom on the commitment list anytime soon. A couple of those, you never know in recruiting, a couple of those guys could surprise. George Pickens won't have a final decision for several months. What about Jamison Williams, another wide receiver? Could he be closer than we thought to making a decision? What about Tyreke Stevenson, the corner from Miami? Georgia's got a lot of buzz right now with that cat. Can they seal the deal? Can Bama make waves flipping other prospects? We just mentioned Pickens. We mentioned the junior college prospect, Jakeem Grant, that Alabama may look to flip. A guy we know they're looking to flip, Ryan Davis, out of Orlando, Florida, committed to Georgia right now. Another inside linebacker. Can Bama make up progress there? So there's a couple of situations to track now and certainly later in the season, including those flips, including those blue chip recruits that are going to wait. Saucier is another one who we expect to wait. Fa'atui Tuitele, how much does Bama press? Is Bama tracking his first few games to see where he's improved, maybe from junior year to senior year? Those are things that we're all still waiting to confirm as the season gets going. So this is typically a time where there's not a lot of movement. You got the kids who want to get things done right around the start of the season, and then there's a little bit of a lull before official visits begin. And I think Bama's going to be kind of on the quiet side of that, at least as we stand looking at it right now. Everything is fluid in recruiting. That may very well change. Who knows? But I don't expect a ton of action right now unless Bama changes the committable offer status for guys like Tuitele, maybe a Jaden Hill they make a late push for. I don't expect it, but it's something that is certainly potentially on the table. And then more via Twitter, Devin Muhammad chiming in with a good question. Can you do a player comp for Jalen Waddell? This is the the freshman wide receiver who everybody's been raving about. We've been raving about him for a year, and now he's on campus and doing what a lot of us thought he could do. Devin says, could he be Tyreek Hill 2.0? Not saying he's there, but both have similar stature, 5'9", 5'10", 195 pounds. I think that you're on the right track, Devin, in terms of a player comparison. But when you get to Tyreek Hill, this is a different level of speed. Tyreek Hill is a legitimate track and field star. I think he could be a potential Olympian if he put all his chips on that side of the coin. I don't think Jalen Waddle's top end speed is quite there, but where it gets scary, and I'm not saying he's slow. I mean, he's a legitimate 4.4 guy. But I think Tyreek Hill's faster top end, and he's much more developed. He's an adult. Jalen Waddle, I think, is 18 years old. So obviously he's got several years on Jalen. But where they're similar and where it's scary is the explosion. That is where separation is created, even more so than top end speed. I mean, the greatest running backs, the greatest interior receivers, the greatest punt returners, the greatest kick returners, these guys were monsters in the acceleration department. It is that initial explosion. It's not necessarily your top speed and how long you can sustain it. It's how fast you can get to top speed. And Jalen Waddell is one of these twitchy guys who gets there soon. He gets there quickly. He gets there before you get there. That is where he becomes special. That is where he becomes scary to opponents. And what is such a benefit, such an advantage for Alabama in this group is that nobody's going to prepare for Jalen Waddell, at least not yet. When you're preparing for Alabama, let's say Tua is the starter, okay? And we'll answer one question about that here in a minute. Let's say Tua is the starter, okay? You know about the running backs, great O-line talent, literally left to right. And the receivers, you got 3 of those guys coming back who all made a big impact in the Natty. Aren't you going to focus on those guys before you even consider a true freshman in Jalen Waddell? Of course you are. It's natural. There's only so many hours in the day that Louisville has to prepare for Alabama. So guess what? If Jalen Waddle's the 4th or 5th receiver in an empty set, he's going to be matched up with a 4th or 5th corner on that opposing roster. Or, imagine this, a safety. Or even better for Alabama, a linebacker. So that is where you could see wow plays developing for Jalen Waddell early on. We know he's going to factor into the return game in some way, shape, or form. But if he can get some burn on offense, which it seems like Bama is going to manufacture at some point, that is where he could have a monster early impact. I expect him to be a chunk player now. Not later, but now for Alabama. So when you look at the player comp, I think Hill has that top speed down. Both of them can get to top speed very quickly. But I actually think at the same stage, Jalen Waddell is more advanced as a route runner, as a pass catcher than Tyreke Hill. Remember, Tyreke was a bit of a running back hybrid in high school and in junior college before he got to Oklahoma State. And even there, they used him however they could. I do see similarities there with Jalen Waddell, but I think Jalen is advanced. I just don't think he has the sustained speed that Tyreke Hill has. But I do like the comp in general. I think there are a lot of similarities there. I'll roll with Tyreke Hill as the comp. I think maybe Tavon Austin, when you talk about quickness and acceleration, Tavon Austin, top end speed, nothing great. Low 4.4, high 4.5, which in the NFL is par for the course. But his acceleration, how quickly he got there, that is what made him special. And I think Jalen has some of those qualities to his name as well. And then finally, as I alluded to, we actually got a good YouTube question, a guy who's been chiming in with us a lot, and we appreciate it, even though we haven't addressed it till now. Melanated Native on YouTube, and of course we're on YouTube right now, as well as SoundCloud. Thanks for following along. Please subscribe. He says, I have a question for you. If you were Nick Saban, would you start Tua over Hurts? And is it even close? I remember the show you recorded the day after Bama lost to Clemson 2016. You were just as disgusted as me. Me personally, I put a lot of blame on Jalen Hurts' terrible passing game, which led to our loss. I'm sure I was pretty harsh on Jalen after that natty loss, but I'm also pretty sure that his second half and his late game effort was enough to win the game. So I may not have blamed the entire game on him like you have. But look, first of all, we don't know everything or really anything about this battle in terms of what has happened this fall. All we know about is what we hear from scrimmages and what we hear from Nick Saban. Our sources have been split, and this is like, I don't make this stuff up. I'm not that creative. Our sources are split on these guys for the most part. If you go back to the scrimmages, which are just such a large part of the evaluation process at this point, our sources said scrimmage 1, Tua was night, Jalen was day. Polar opposites, Tua cooler, calmer, consistent. Jalen turnover prone, inconsistent, perhaps overcompensating. Scrimmage 2, from what we were told, it was consensus that Jalen Hurts was better, not by a ton, not by the margin that Tua was better in the first scrimmage, but it was consensus that Jalen was better. One source put it 60-40 in favor of Jalen. He had a couple of great deep balls. Another source told us the best deep balls that Jalen's thrown in his life. They were all completed as well. in terms of the ones that we're discussing. So that's what we were told. That's what we were told. Other than that, you've got Rolling with the Tide helping us out. You got Nick Saban pretending to help us out and additional sources. That's it. That's it. So I don't have all of the facts. I'm not there every day. So based on what I know, yeah, I'd start Tua. I think he gives Alabama the chance to be more explosive. I also think he's going to be much more turnover prone overall compared to Jalen Hurts. So how much is that balance worth it? I don't know. I don't know that answer. But I also know that it kind of doesn't matter early on. I think that quarterback situation is one that can stay wide open because Bama, can you rotate those guys and win against Louisville? If Bama has championship aspirations, you better be able to win games with Jalen Hurts. I mean, you've won 26 out of 28 with him. So I think you can win some more. That's all. That's all I'm saying. I would start Tua. The passing threat is different with him on the field. There's no debating that. I think Jalen Hurts would sit here and tell you that. But teams now have tape on Tua. Teams are going to expect Tua. How much does that stuff factor in to his potential success, his ceiling for success? But I will say, when Tua's on the field, and I actually watched a little bit more of the national championship game again last night, Tua presents a different situation. That Georgia defense kind of got back on its heels a little bit after realizing how Tua can flick it. And look, Tua missed on a lot of opportunities in that game. His first downfield shot against cover 0, he missed Calvin Ridley, needed to put more air on it, would have been a touchdown. Now, Jalen Hurts missed a touchdown to Calvin Ridley early in the game as well on that fade ball, I believe in the first quarter. So there was a lot of missed opportunity in that game. But it's different when Tua's on the field just in terms of your feel as a defender. Period. That alone changes the game, literally. And again, Tua can move a little bit as well. So it's not like there's a massive drop-off when they tuck it and run it or run to extend the play. So I'd go Tua right now, but I don't know all the facts. I don't know all the information. I don't know which one is picking up Mike Locksley's offense better. I don't know which one is impressing Dan Enos more in the quarterback room. I don't know which one is advanced mentally to adjust to the blitz. Play call, shift the line, shift the blocking, alter routes, and truly lead. I don't know that answer. We've seen Jalen do it more than Tua has by default, but that's all we got. So those things are up to Enos, up to Saban, up to Locksley, and we don't have near the facts that they do. But a great question nonetheless from Melanated Native. To wrap up Q&A, to wrap up the week on Crimson and Blue Chips, we truly thank you for listening. Thanks to Kevin Harris, thanks to producer Kev, thanks to Kirk McNair. Great week of shows. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed putting it on for you. Have a great football weekend. God bless. Garcia out.